You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I, of course, am James Boyd, joined by my buddy, my best friend in the sports media world, Tony East. Tony, how you doing, my man?
The only person I send my takes to is James Boyd. So I'm glad to be on the very well-named James Boyd Podcast.
Yes, so we have plenty to discuss. And for those listening, no, this is not a Colts podcast just yet. I'll get back to that next week when I'm back from my vacation from The Athletic. But until then, I figured we had to discuss the big news of Myles Turner no longer being a Pacer, but now a Milwaukee Buck. And also to wrap up the season, I felt like we kind of left you on a cliffhanger there. Everyone knows what's happened since then, obviously. But the last time we spoke, Tony, I believe it was on your podcast on Locked On Pacers. And this was before the finals had even ended. So lots has changed between now and then. So let's start with the biggest, latest news. What was your reaction to A, Myles Turner becoming a Milwaukee Buck, and B, following the breadcrumbs to figure out how the heck did he become a Milwaukee Buck? Because when I spoke to you last time, they were not an option as far as free agents teams go.
Yeah, that I have to be careful to not just like talk for 10 minutes straight.
Oh, yeah, feel free.
Because that's what made it so stunning is the Nets used their cap space, like people talked about them a little bit, and like he got linked to the Pistons and the Hawks, and they used their resources, and I even tweeted that out, like, okay, there's everybody else, right? Like, I don't know how you felt, but in that moment I thought, okay, like somehow, some way he will either be a Pacer or be signed and traded from the Pacers for something. And then the Shams notification hits, and the way I have like my phone set up is you only get the first like half of a sentence.
Same, yeah.
Same. Yeah, so I saw like Myles Turner has agreed to 4 for 107. I was like, oh, okay, like that makes perfect sense to me. Like as a contract with the Pacers. And then it was not the Pacers. And I was like, how is this even possible? Is Kyle Kuzma coming to the Pacers? What is going on? So I was very confused first. Then the Bucks did a bunch of crazy stuff, which like good for them. And they might be pretty good. But so that was my first reaction. It's like, how is this actually happening? And then it's like, man, that's not even that high. Like that's less than 30 million per year that clearly poorly, but still people kind of prognosticated, although he did get a player option and a trade kicker. And it just straight up signing with a different team. Like, were the Pacers not offering close to this? How much were they offering? Why did something that felt like everyone in the league assumed would happen and everybody thought made perfect sense to happen? What actually happened here? And even still, 2 days later, I still almost feel like almost incomplete in terms of the information, because given what we've heard about offers and how this landed, I just sort of feel like there's something we still don't know about how this went down, because it's just kind of stunning to me that the Pacers would let a good player and what I would consider a reasonable contract just walk out the door without, getting closer, matching the offer, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I was completely floored because I had the same reaction, and I'm reading and I'm like, okay. Huh? What the heck? And so normally I am a team player and I wait for my people at The Athletic to confirm things, but I was just firing off tweets yesterday. I actually got a text from one of our NBA editors. They have a live blog. And again, I'm off this week and he's like, hey, I see you're, talking on Twitter. Do you want to, share your thoughts in a blog post? And I was thinking, nah, not really, because I haven't really thought it out. I was literally just spitballing and thinking out loud, and honestly was thinking like, oh my gosh, I forgot my bosses like listen to my or see my tweets and see how I'm thinking. But none of it was like inappropriate for work, but I was just thinking I hadn't really thought of the totality just yet. And really, one of my biggest takeaways, Tony, was when you look at the waive and stretch provision, which is what the Bucks used. I mean, I haven't heard those words since Monte Ellis, to be honest. And so, for those listening who are unfamiliar, it means that you can waive a player who still has money left on their deal and then stretch the rest of his contract over the next 5 years. And so, in this case, what makes it so unprecedented and so crazy is that Lillard is guaranteed, I believe, like 112.6 million over his next 2 years of his contract. He'll get paid all of his money, but the Bucks will carry about a $22 million cap hit over the next 5 years in dead money and dead money is money you can't use on a current player for someone who's not on their roster. And so as I thought about this more and more, I was like, wow, that's how they created the money to get Myles. But the other part of it too is like, as much as we've talked about how much Tyrese's Achilles changed the math for the Pacers, there's another Achilles tendon tear in this equation. Like the Bucks are not doing this if Damian Lillard is healthy. Even if they traded him or whatever the case may be this offseason, this would not happen if he was healthy. I mean, we're talking about a future Hall of Famer here. So that to me was another big takeaway of just how unique this situation is and the pressure that obviously Giannis has put on that franchise to, make moves or try to put them back in title contention position. But that was one of my bigger, just takeaways and overall thoughts, Tony, was wow, this is something we may never see again. And hopefully not, because at the center of it all is two Achilles tears to two really great players.
Well, you could even expand this if you wanted. Like the Pacers traded with the Pelicans to get their pick back, and then the Pelicans used that Pacers pick and their own pick for next year to move up because DeJounte Murray's Achilles is ruptured there, right? Yeah. Like if Dame signs with the Celtics, like you could just make this web of how these like the four major Achilles tears of the season all led to all this kind of movement and connectivity. It's just really bizarre how and it's very telling about how damaging that injury is to a team. That every team got in that situation was like, okay, we have to completely change what we're doing. And like you could already connect the Hawks and Celtics because of Porzingis and the Hawks and the Pelicans because of that crazy trade. So it's not that hard to do this. Like the web of the Achilles has formed, and the Pacers are potentially at the center of it. And you could very easily tie it back to Turner because I think what most people's interpretation has been connecting the dots of reporting, and I would like to eventually, it'll be easier to talk about this once someone gets behind a microphone in Milwaukee or Indiana, which can't happen until the 6th anyway, is that the Pacers, after, I would presume, Halliburton's Achilles injury, were like, well, the tax is no longer like a smart thing to do because their ceiling is lower. I would have considered other ways to get under that, which we could talk about later if we want to. But if that is the reason they weren't willing to offer Turner more or do something like that, like I understand the tax being a new barrier to them. I would have just found a different way to get under. But it has been fascinating to see just how all these Achilles injuries have totally shaped all of these teams.
So let's get into that, Tony. Do you think it was the right decision to essentially let Myles Turner walk? And I say essentially with air quotations around it because I'm not sure if the Pacers could anticipate that the Bucks would do something this drastic. Like this is unprecedented. This is the most money we've ever seen anybody get waived and stretched for. And like I just laid out, I highly doubt, unless there is some unique, cruel twist of fate, we probably will never see this again. So with all that in mind, though, the Pacers still had an opportunity to perhaps offer Myles the money he wanted, offer him the same amount of money. Now we have, reports out there, did they have a chance to match? Did they, offer him the money up front? Like all these different things are going on. I would love, like you said, Tony, to just give everybody truth serum, sit them down in front of a mic and tell me everything, bare your soul, which probably still won't happen when they get in front of these mics in a few days. But again, it goes back to half the fan base here, or at least, a loud portion of them are like, good riddance. He was bad in the finals. We don't want him. We don't want to pay him all his money. We don't want him in the tax, yada, yada, yada. Then the other half is like, well, why not pay the tax? Just because we're taking a gap year, Halliburton will be healthy again, and we got a chance to go right back at this thing in a year plus. So where do you land on that spectrum?
Yeah, it is really hard to figure out the perfect place to land.
Good
like
point.
What I was thinking about today specifically was like, let's pretend the tax is this hard barrier for the Pacers and then pretend that having Myles Turner on their team is not something they want to do because of that tax barrier. Well, the tax doesn't become a thing till the end of the season, as you know from your fun time on 1 year of a tax strapped Pacers team making a bunch of little moves.
Yeah.
Like we know now because a different team signed him to this that teams view Myles Turner as a high 20s to $30 million player, right? I don't have to guess that anymore. The Bucks signed him to that deal. So they're like the Pacers could have just signed him to this and then traded him to get under the tax later in the season and gotten stuff for him because we know teams think he's worth this much. Like even that leaves them in the same situation they are now, plus some assets or like plus half a season of more data. So like why that's what makes me wonder, like, did they not get a chance to match this offer? Did they not really think he would take it? Like, how did this end? Because I don't think it's very hard to connect what's happened so far, right? Of that we can see what people have said some offers were, and it sounds like those are coming from different places, but
Yeah.
that would to me be a first offer kind of number. What we've heard from people like in the low to mid 20s million range. Greg Doyle reported a hard 4 for 95. That is less than 4 for 107, right? So
Yeah.
like you have to give the Pacers some sort of whatever you want to call it. Hey, you weren't willing to match it, whatever. I want to know if that came before or after the Bucks offer, because I would understand a scenario where the Bucks are like, we will offer you this, but you have to take it now. Because if it
Yeah.
gets out that we're going to waive and stretch Dame or anything like that, like that's very bad if we don't actually get a player for it. And we don't want to offer this and then have it get countered. And I understand how that could be possible. So the order of events is important to me. I'd be curious how quickly that came together on the Milwaukee side when they realized they could get to that number. But it's just very interesting to me that the Pacers weren't willing to go a little higher and then figure something else out later, which either says something about their evaluation of Turner or says something about Turner's potential desires, which would, in theory, get them off the hook of any blame of just like he didn't want to be here. But that's still like, well, why not? You're a finals team. Like, why didn't it's just
Yeah.
there's so many layers to the how did this get to this point, and there's a lot. I understand people saying, oh, he didn't play well in the finals, you can't pay him this kind of money. It's like you got to be in the finals to play bad in the finals, right? That's part
Yeah.
of what I think.
That's fair.
But like, well, I get that he did play good in the first two rounds. He was good in the playoffs last year. I don't know. I have always thought that he was worth the contract he just signed with the Bucks personally. I mean, the player option and trade kickers a lot. I'm rambling, but there's
You're
just so
fine.
many layers to this that make it so hard to know. Like, I would love to know the exact order of events and offers because that would really tell you how much of a finger should be pointed where and at who, if there's even a finger to point, how this got to this point, and what it actually means for what the Pacers team building planning is. Because as of us talking right now, they still have done nothing. Like, they've lost Turner and added nobody besides their draft picks.
Yeah. And that's the part where I'm like, look, you know, love Kim Jones, love Taylor Peter, but they're not 6'10, they're not 6'11, and it's hard to replace a guy who's been there for 10 years for you. So when I hear your thoughts on it, especially knowing, like you said, that you're not gonna have to worry about the tax until after the end of the season, I wonder if there is a possibility, and this is all speculation for those listening, this isn't reporting, but I'm just like, could you have gone to Myles and said, hey, we will make sure you get your money either from us or from someone else, but work with us on a sign and trade. Work with
Yes.
us on, something where we can get you out of here. Now, I do believe, from what I understand, Tony, feel free to correct me, I don't believe the Bucks were eligible for a sign and trade because of they're already in, I believe, the tax or something like that.
They were high up in the aprons when they had Dame on the team, which would have made it wasn't impossible, but it would have been like they would have had to cut Connaughton's money and done a lot of other stuff to actually do that. You said something else in there that I wanted to respond to, and I already forgot what it was. Oh yeah, the sign and trade aspect of it. Like part of me wondered if when day one he didn't sign because he was by far the best player left on the board, if that is what it had come to, is like they were exploring that while negotiating. But alas, that does not end up mattering at all.
No, no, and again, he still holds all the cards. I mean, when you enter unrestricted free agency, you don't have to wait necessarily for a
Right.
sign and trade. You don't have to do this team a quote unquote solid just because you've been there for 10 years. And part of me is like, man, could it have been the contract length? Because if the Pacers tell me, hey, we don't necessarily want to give a 4-year contract to this guy, and we don't want to be tied to that length of time, I kind of understand it because from Miles' perspective, and I know people are like, oh my gosh, he was not that good in the finals, whatever. The point is, this is probably his last chance to get a huge contract, his last chance to really cash in.
Yes.
And when you're, messing around with, hey, we'll give you 23, somebody else comes in, so 27. I hear often people are like, man, like that's not a big difference to you. I mean, to the player, most of them are not going to give the quote unquote hometown discount because the ownership can still figure out ways to pay me all my money and build a contender around. I mean, we've seen it for a lot of different teams. So to kind of piggyback off your thoughts earlier, Tony, when you said they had other options they could explore, what were some of those options? I have an idea in my own head, but what were some of those options you were thinking of? Like, okay, if they bring Myles back at, let's say, $27 million a year, which is roughly what he got to go to Milwaukee, what other things could they have done to still avoid the luxury tax, or at least avoid it to the extent of how high it would have been had they brought him back and not made any other moves?
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.
Yeah, they have all these like midder, that's not a word, like mid-tier, mid-tier salary guys that you wonder if they could have moved off those instead. Not that that'd have been fun, right?
Right.
Shedding money stinks. But, at the number he started at, they would have been pretty close to a Jarris Walker away from getting under. They would have had to still fill out their team, so it's not that easy, but it's close to that. Mm-hmm. But like Ben Mathurin, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, all those guys, trading guys for no salary in return is not easy right now in the NBA.
Right.
But that would have, like, that's the kind of question you have to ask is how many, if any, because those guys just came off a finals run. Like, they have this shine right now.
Yeah.
How much assets, if any, would you have to have moved with whoever of those players you would have moved into the Pacers to get small enough amounts of money back to be under the tax with Turner? And so then you're basically asking yourself, you're trading that asset to have Turner instead of that player. I think Myles Turner is very good. So I would have done that if the option was available to me as the Pacers. Obviously, if he just accepts an offer with the Bucks, you don't have the choice anymore. But I would have thought personally that would be the preferred option. And clearly other teams view him as that level of player because a team signed him to that deal, which is something I have to keep reminding people.
Yeah.
So it's not just my opinion of him. It's the NBA's opinion of him as a player and a talent. And like, that player is unique and worth more than most reserves who don't play as much. That's how I would have gone about it. Mathurin's been talked about a lot just because of his extension situation. Obviously, his situation is now way different given the Pacers' outlook and spending situations. But going into it, you wondered a lot about him. Toppin and McConnell, I think, were the 3 names that were thrown around the most. But that's kind of how I would have approached the taxes, the Pacers. Obviously, I have no brain because everything they've done is not what I expected this offseason. That's what I would have personally thought about as them.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Like, do you offload one of your either up-and-coming talents in a guy like Mathurin or Walker, or do you offload someone who may have maxed out who they are? TJ McConnell comes to mind. I know TJ is beloved here, but he's also 33. And look at the timeline. Okay, in 2 years, is he the same level of player? I mean, you're asking that question about all the players on the roster at the moment because of the Tyrese injury, assuming that Tyrese himself can come back and be healthy and be fine. And I do think he can be. He's 25. He's literally getting worked on by one of the best surgeons in the world. And so I expect a full recovery in that regard and for him to still be, in my mind, an all-star, all-NBA caliber player. But it's not a guaranteed until we see it again. Now, I will pivot away from the Myles Turner conversation, which I'm sure will continue on into the abyss. I'm getting my haircut cut later today, and I'm sure when I walk in the barbershop, that'll be one of the topics that we have, Tony, and it'll be very contentious. However, now that he's no longer in the picture, and like you mentioned, and like I've mentioned, there's a void at the center position. Yes, they picked up Tony Bradley's team option for the upcoming season. Yes, they extended a qualifying offer to Isaiah Jackson, who's coming off an Achilles tear himself, by the way. But there are no clear-cut, at least in my opinion, starting caliber centers that the Pacers have already had on their roster aside from Myles. Like I hear people tell me, oh, just running back with Thomas Bryant or running back with Isaiah or running back with James Wise and running back with Tony Bradley. None of those guys have proven to be even I would say bad starting center in the NBA. None of them have proven to be a starter at all. I can't say good or bad when it comes to Isaiah and others because of the injuries, but like they're not proven. They're not close to Myles. They're not, at least in my opinion, close to being reliable starting centers. So what options do they have in that pool of players, Tony? But also outside of the names that we already know because they play for the team. Like, where do they go from here? Because I look at DeAndre Ayton's number going to the Lakers, Tony, and I was like, man, for that number, and possibly like a team option for the second year. I believe he got a player option, but point being, for that number, 2 years, $16 million for DeAndre Ayton, I wasn't totally against it. I know he's got effort issues and things like that and a couple of red flags. But for that number, I might have took a flyer on him. But he's not available anymore. So what options do they have, man, in-house and out-house?
Yeah, the player option for him is where I was like, man, if I'm the Pacers, like, do I really want to cut? Like, if he stinks, do I want to commit to that year Halliburton comes
Yeah,
back?
I know. Team option would have been more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
where it would have probably fell apart in our negotiations.
I think as of us talking, I have to say that every time during free agency chats.
You're
'Cause,
fine.
like, by
You're
the time it comes out, the only what I would consider starting a level center who's just not on a team is Al Horford. He does shoot threes. He's a good player. On one hand, you're like, well, he wouldn't fit in the high-paced Pacers system. On the other hand, are they going to be playing fast next year with higher? I don't know. He is a good player. It seems like he would probably prefer a place with a lot of championship or at least a good amount of championship equity. Outside of him, I think Mo Wagner's good, but he's coming off a big injury too. Like, you never know what that's going to look like. And that's why when you talk about the internal guys, I think Isaiah Jackson's a good player, right? He's played well as a reserve for the Pacers in his time here. He could very well be a good player next year. One, like you said, we have very little evidence of him being a starter level, long minutes player. In fact, he had foul trouble before.
Yep.
And two, he's coming off of an Achilles tear. How good is he actually going to be to start next season? Talking to Jaleel Okafor with the Boom/Mad Ants this past season, he returned to playing from his Achilles tear in 9 months, but he said he didn't really feel like himself playing for like a year and a half. For Jackson, that would be like next February, right? That's a long time off. I'm not saying that's going to be his timeline. That's just what other players have said. So maybe he'll be good. You'd never know. And if he's not a starter level player. Wiseman, same thing. We don't know how good he would have been pre-Achilles, post-Achilles, and that's his second major injury, by the way. Like, how good is he going to be? I think we have a pretty clear idea of the level of Bryant and Bradley, who are
My favorite Pacer, Thomas Bryant, by the way. Kobe Bryant's nephew, if you didn't know. But continue.
who are like, they're like low end back, good enough to be backups, sure, but like low end backups, you'd probably prefer to have them as a third center as an NBA team. Now the Pacers' financial considerations might not give them any more options. We'll see. They both had different moments in the playoffs. Thomas Bryant closed out 2 series, like legitimately incredible games, but Bradley, I would say on balance, was probably a little bit more impactful on the bigger stage. Honestly, if they picked either one of them, they'd be like, okay, whatever. I get it. Maybe even both, depending what happens now. But like none of those are starter level options. They still would need a 5. And like, are they really ready to go Siakam topping that much next year? I don't know. That does lead you to the trade market, but like, how much are you willing to give up for a year that your ceiling is whatever? The East is not very good, so they could still maybe make the playoffs, but like not that high. It's just kind of a tricky spot to find themselves in, which is why perhaps they explore trading for like a young big who's good, or like an established big with a long contract who isn't that old. But that's obviously easier said than done because those players are good and on teams for a reason. So it is a really, really fascinating spot, and they could just take a air quotes gap year. But like, go tell Siakam, Neesmith, and Nembhard that, right?
That's
like,
yes. I am so glad you brought this up, Tony. I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, I'll let you continue, but I will expand on that because I have been beating this drum since the decision, obviously, for Myles to go to Milwaukee. But go ahead.
Yeah, we could get to the gap here in a second, but like, it's just very hard to figure out what makes the most sense for them at center. That's why when I ran through a trade list, I tried to find guys on teams where I'm like, I can see this team trading a center for some reason or another. But even then, finding guys that like it actually makes sense for the Pacers to want them, and it makes sense for the team they're on to give them up, and they're actually kind of good. It's not a long list. It is not a very long list of, especially if you narrow it down to like young or like could have a future, because like Kelly Olynyk's on the Wizards now. Why do the Wizards care about Kelly Olynyk? He fits in the mid-level. Like, great. That you could in theory be like, perfect, there's your Pacers center, but like, what does that do for the Pacers beyond this already like who kind of cares season. So
Yeah.
it's just a really tough needle to thread that could have been solved by Myles Turner, but he signed somewhere else. And so now they have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I've heard Walker Kessler as well, and I'm
Yep.
like, you sure you want to give up some draft assets for that? Because he won't come cheap in a sense of
And
what
you got to
have
pay him the
get up
next
to.
year.
Exactly. And are you willing to do that before he's played with Tyrese Halliburton? Like these are things you have to think about. And the reason why I got so excited when you said that, Tony, was because I think when we in the media or even among the fan base say, oh, the Pacers are taking a gap year, we understand it, yada, yada, yada. That's easier to digest when you're not a player. Like if you go up to Siakam and you're saying, this is the guy who's won a championship, just helped you get to game 7 in the finals. Hey, by the way, I know you're 31, but we're not really going to like invest too much in the center position this year. We're going to take this year off, but play hard, play every single game, give us a chance to be competitive, and we'll see where we are at the end. Like, how do you sell that? How do you make them believe that? How do you make them this team that, beyond Halliburton, they have given you everything. All these guys, I mean, you've prided yourself on being a team full of dogs that give everything, that go hard every single night, that play through injury, that play through pain. I mean, one guy literally tore his Achilles to try to get you a championship, and then you come back the following year and you tell the rest of the guys who are available and can play, you know what? Thomas Bryant it is. No disrespect to Thomas Bryant, again, my favorite pacer of all time. Kobe Bryant's nephew, which is not true, by the way. But I don't know how much, high energy Thomas Bryant's, minutes and celebrations you can deal with for over 82 game season. So it is an interesting dynamic, especially when you consider, like I mentioned earlier on the podcast, that your 2 draft picks, Cam Jones and Taylor Peter, by the way, who I think are 2 fascinating prospects. I think Cam Jones is obviously the one that's more plug and play, but Taylor Peter, when I looked at some of the stuff you've written about him in Forbes recently, Tony, I think you were the first one to point out how efficient he was from 2, because my eyes went to 3 at first. I'm like, okay, this guy can shoot it a little bit, but man, he doesn't really miss shots. And so he's a unique player, but again, he's not 6'10". He's not a center. Yeah. So when you didn't draft a center, that to me was more an indication like, oh, they're going to try to, retain Myles, and it just didn't happen. So now you're really,
Agreed.
I think, at, the end of the road. I was just like, what are your options after that? That's where I'm at. Like, there is one thing to be like, okay, we don't want Myles, but like, do you want a center, period? Because
when they went into the draft, I said like, yeah, I picked best player available because of the assumption I thought they'd have Turner back, and then it like doesn't actually matter. They have a lot of minutes without Turner. I'm like, maybe they should have drafted this Maxime kid from Stanford. I don't actually know that. I don't know how good he is. I don't know how good any player was this year. Obviously, they played a finals game 3 days before the draft, but that was certainly telling to me they didn't pick a center. I was like, okay, they feel like they have a plan there.
The last thought that I'll leave this on, the whole center conversation, Myles conversation, is that the biggest thing I think they need to do, and hopefully we do get some clarity in the next coming days with a formal press conference, with the front office, with the coach, whatever the case may be. Somebody I think does need to speak before Summer League or, before all this stuff starts kicking off for the next season. Just address your team, your fan base, whatever. Like, don't be the Knicks, for example, and you make a move and they never have anybody speak on it. And it's like, well, what's the team's direction? What's your plan here? Because obviously you won't share everything with the public, but my biggest thing, Tony, beyond all of the who is actually playing center conversation, is what did you tell Tyrese Halliburton? Because when he comes back, presumably in a year and a half, your plan just can't be trust us or we'll draft somebody or we'll figure it out. You need to be telling this dude, yes, we know you gave up a year of your prime for us to try to win a championship, and we will do everything to make sure that you're in a position again. Because I think that they're a worse team, obviously, without Myles Turner today than having him. People keep telling me, and I believe it to a certain degree. There is a possibility for you to be better. Take a step back now. And I know Caitlin Cooper's kind of floated this idea. You take a step back now, take 2 steps forward later down the line. But what does that look like, and how do you sell that to your franchise player who, again, that's the main guy you got to make sure you're on the same page with? Because you can't be selling him these Wolf tickets and then the team rolls around and he's healthy again and he's out there playing with guys who are not elite enough to really make a run or to really contend in the Eastern Conference. So that's one of my final takeaways on that, Tony. Just, how do you sell Tyrese?
And I still mechanically wonder like the how, they get a good center. Like
I know, but I try to give a little grace because you can't
Yeah.
predict everything, 2
No.
years down the line. But yes, the how is certainly fascinating. And it almost feels like you need one of your draft picks to become a star,
Yes.
in Benedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker.
Yeah.
And then you figure out, okay, how do we acquire somebody? Is it through assets? Because you stayed, out of the luxury tax, you still have all of your assets in theory. Can you use some of those assets, offload some of that, and then go get the starting caliber center or the guy you feel like can be with Tyrese and make this thing work? But man, that 2 years is a long time.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.
And even if you disagree with the front office on what they did with Myles, I will give them this. They have been very, very good at building teams.
Yes.
And pivoting to build teams, right?
Yes.
From PG era to Vic era to, I guess the Domas era wasn't covered in glory, but we saw the vision.
Yeah, there was an era though.
The Brogdon, Vic, TJ Warren, Sabonis, Turner core looked awesome. It played together all of 8 games, but we saw what they were trying to do, and then they pivot right to Hal. They've done a good job getting from thing to thing to thing. They do. This is an incomplete moment. Obviously, I'm still very confused about how this happened. But yeah, that's the next part. Is okay, I guess they have more flexibility. It's not a ton more. How are they getting the center? They'll probably have to trade players who are currently on the team to do that. And all these young guys, if they have an awesome year, have to pay them. That's great. But you're running into the same financial problem they have right now in that case, and you still don't have a center. So it's just really interesting. And the last, I want to finish up that gap year stuff.
Yeah.
The only air quotes advantage they have for that is their only meaningful player on an expiring contract right now is Ben Mathurin. And so it's not like these guys are going to be heading into free agency off the year without Halliburton, right? Where you would look worse. So that is the only pro. Is it's not like you're telling guys, hey, we're taking a gap. You're well, crap, I'm going to hit free agency with a low stock.
Right.
Be here. So that is in their favor. But I totally agree with you that all these are good players, right? They want to be good. I suppose there's a balance to be had between developing your young guys. Nembhard is still young. Neesmith is still young. Mathurin, Walker, obviously Shepard, Furphy. All these guys are still young and on the team. And in theory, maybe everybody but Furphy, I just said, and perhaps Isaiah Jackson too. All these guys in line for minutes. I understand how you could balance winning and development with that core. But just because they got their pick back, they can't just tank. They're too good. And these guys aren't going to just sit out. I don't think they're just going to be well, Halliburton got hurt. We're trading everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't think they can, air quotes, gap year. When I think teams, or not even teams, when I think media people say that, and I have been guilty of saying the term, even though it's not a thing I think the Pacers should do, I think they're just saying, get through a year without expectations, not just, take the year off of trying to win.
Yeah.
And in some ways, going back to past seasons of the Pacers, when you don't have expectations, the season becomes pretty fun because then all the little moments matter and all these little skill developments matter. You're not as invested in the wins and losses, but it will be harder for everybody that they'll be worse. And so they've got to figure out how to sell whatever their vision is to the team because they clearly know, especially without 2 starters now from their last championship team or their finals team, that they're going to be worse, but they can't go to these 3 awesome starters and good bench players and be nope, we're not trying to win this year. So how they toe that line will be fascinating, and who they get at center to do it will be very revealing about their plans.
My early thoughts, Tony, and thank you for breaking all that down so eloquently, but go get Lance Stevenson to play center. I would sign up for that. I would cover the heck out of that, and it would sell a bunch of tickets. I feel like every time there's a weird year, at least in my small time being in Indiana, being in Indianapolis, you bring Lance back, you get the vibes going. He has some crazy weird game, and everyone's okay, well, we weren't that good this season, but Lance gave us a few moments. But jokes aside, I do think that everything you said is spot on. So I'm excited to see what's next because, we're not paid to make those decisions, but we're paid to sort of analyze them. So I don't envy Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, and any others right now because, again, it all goes back to your star player towards Achilles in Game 7. And if that doesn't happen, how much different does all of this look for everyone? Again, the Bucks as well. Their star player, one of their star players towards Achilles. If that doesn't happen, is Myles still a Pacer? All those things, aside, I do want to end this podcast on a more positive note. So you were there for all of the Pacers run. I was there for, all the home games. And for those who keep asking me, like, why weren't you in OKC? They sent our full-time NBA reporters. So though I love The Athletic and they let me go anywhere pretty much and do anything. Yes, I understand there's a budget. So for those asking why I wasn't there alongside you, Tony, it's because we had other writers and we were there. We had people for The Athletic for I think it might have been 8 to 10 people for every single game of the finals.
The Athletic covered the finals more than any other company on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. So I have no qualms or issues with my company. I enjoyed the fact that they even let me moonlight on the beat from the Pacers side when they did have the home games and things like that. So I have to ask, what was your favorite non-Halliburton moment of the playoff run, and then your favorite Halliburton moment? Because obviously, as we know, there were plenty of them for this guy who, by the way, has only been in 2 playoffs in his career, but probably has a career montage better than most Hall of Famers, I would argue.
Dang, both of my answers might be the same 4 minutes of a game. My Halliburton moment is the MSG shot. So I don't think I could make the case for the Cavs one as much, but if you asked me to, I could. But I could make a case for all of them, right? The Thunder one was in the finals. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And obviously they came back from down 15 in that fourth quarter. The Bucks one was at home to clinch a series against what I would consider their biggest rival. That is crazy. That was awesome. That one being at home, I think people are not giving it enough credit for. He jumped on the table and all that stuff. The Cavs one was awesome because it was the second one. But the MSG one, man, they were it was over. Right? Down 14 with under 3 minutes to go is over. The game is done. And so to hit the shot and that was because he had done it twice by that point. Everybody's oh, he's gonna do it again. To have it bounce like that, so fans in the arena are cheering as the ball's in the air, and then it went in, and then he perfectly nailed the Reggie sign, and after realizing it was a 2, they still held on to win the game. That one was the most unforgettable one moment shot to me. But my non-Halliburton answer would be just Aaron Nesmith turning into God for the 5 minutes before that shot, and MSG was just what is going on? This dude is sprinting full speed into insane threes and just bucket. One of the hottest shooting stretches in playoff history out of nowhere. Nesmith lives in MSG, and I kind of felt bad for him that he didn't get as much. I mean, not bad. That's a harsh way to put it. He should have got way more shine for that stretch, and Halliburton hit the shot. And I actually, I know you'll appreciate this because you sit in media seats too. I really appreciated Aaron Nesmith being totally honest and willing to admit after the game that he wanted to take the last shot in that game, because that is one of the only times in Pacers playoff history where if Aaron Nesmith took the last shot instead of Halliburton, everybody would be yep, I totally get it. Right?
Exactly.
And he admitted it, right? And they still won the game, so no one cares. But I just, that was awesome. And there are a lot of little, like I talked about already, Thomas Bryant closeout games and Siakam's finals dunk, McConnell's series, Matherin's huge game 6. So many little things throughout the playoffs that were oh, that was cool. That was cool to cover. I'm glad lots of guys got to have a moment on a big stage along the way. But that Nesmith heater was otherworldly. People forgot about Gary Trent's stretch because Nesmith was better. So just so many things.
I could not believe the Tyrese Halliburton shot. And if I remember correctly, I believe that shot was the same day that Jim Irsay passed.
It was.
So the next morning on the radio, it was.
And the Penske stuff.
Yes. So I was just scrambling. I was thinking, how do you do a radio show where on one side you're elated, you're over the top, you're over the moon, and on the other hand, you're wow, one of our biggest figures in the city and sports history in this city is no longer with us. So that was an interesting just dynamic for myself. But to answer my own question, my 2 favorite moments, and I guess I'll cheat a little bit. I loved Game 6. and this is Halliburton-esque, this is the non-Halliburton category, but when he got the steal in game 6 and in the slow-mo like montage of it, slow-mo video of it, you can see him run past Reggie and his son on the sideline. He gets the steal, the deflection on Jalen Williams, throws it ahead to Pascal Siakam. Jalen Williams, being the defender that he is, all-league defender, very much a try-hard, anybody would be in the NBA Finals. He runs back on defense. And Pascal, who was supposed to be a priest, by the way, and changed careers to basketball, baptized that young man with the dunk that went through the Earth's core. Like that play, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what a dunk. And the scariest part for me, and what really kind of let me know how serious the Pacers were, was the fact that this dude didn't even react after. Siakam dunked on this man so hard, the crowd goes crazy, and he didn't even blink. They just went about their business, and I was like, oh my gosh. These dudes think they can win this. I think you felt that way, obviously, up until Game 7. And even at halftime, they were leading halftime of Game 7, even after Halliburton, who had a great start to that game, went down with the Achilles. So that's one play. Obviously, everyone knows my real favorite non-Halliburton moment has to be Thomas Bryant Game 6 against the Knicks. I give credit where credit is due. And jokes aside, talking to him about that performance, what it meant to him, kind of being an NBA journeyman and having his moment, he was very candid too, Tony. I think you appreciate this. He was saying, yes, I won a championship with Denver, but I get to play. Like, I get to play with this team. I feel like I'm contributing more, and the opportunity to send them to the finals. He was crying, after that game and really emotional and just telling me all about his journey towards ACL at one point in his career. I don't think I put that in my own story, but just knowing the full scope of what he's been through and how hard he genuinely tries to play well, I was happy for that guy because as funny as he is, the antics, and sometimes you're like, man, if you could just defend a little bit better, maybe you'd be a better player. Whatever the case may be, he's a flawed player, but he's a good-hearted player, a great teammate, and he came up big for them to get to Game 6, to get the Game 6 win, get to the finals. And the last thing I'll say as far as Halliburton, favorite moment, my Halliburton moment probably was Game 1 of the finals because that's the biggest stage. They're the best defense in the league. They're the best team in the league record-wise. You go in there. You hadn't led all game. You hadn't had a good game shooting the ball either because I think in the previous games he had game winners. He had played well overall. He hadn't really played that well offensively in that game, and he still came up with the biggest shot, one of the biggest shots you'll ever see in the finals. And I can only imagine, Tony, the air that was taken out of that building. Loud City had to be pretty quiet after that shot. So that's when I was thinking, is this destiny? And it felt like it all the way up until the Achilles.
I told people this about the MSG one a little bit, although it bounced. But like the Thunder one, I just like, yep, he's gonna score. Like I've seen this so many times.
See, the pessimist in me was like, they can't do this again, can they? And then they did, and I probably woke up my entire blog because I was just so shocked. It wasn't even like they say in media you're not supposed to cheer for the team you cover, and I wasn't necessarily cheering. I was genuinely floored from a basketball standpoint, like. From a mathematical standpoint, I'm like, what are the freaking odds that he does this? I mean, the dude had 3 game winners, 4 shots in the last 5 seconds to tie or take the lead in 1 playoff run. Like, that is incredible stuff. Like, Michael Jordan didn't do that. Reggie Miller didn't do that. LeBron James didn't do that. So
that's a legendary player's career.
Yes.
He did it in 2 months.
So
to close up on Thomas Bryant, we talk to these players, we see them in the locker rooms and all that. Like we kind of get a sense of their emotional state and like what they're about. But until you see a guy like in tears, slamming his fist on the scorer's table after winning the conference finals, like when you see guys' emotions in those moments, that's when you learn who they are.
Yep.
And that was a very revealing Thomas Bryant, like, man, this means so much to this guy kind of moment.
Exactly. I remember the quote that he gave me too, and I'll leave you all with this. He was just saying that when you don't get the playing time you want, people make excuses and they want to say, oh, you got screwed. And he was like, it's not necessarily that you got screwed. You just got to figure out a way to keep persevering. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of, when people doubt you or they say you can't do something, you got to persevere long enough to sort of prove that you can do some things that maybe others didn't believe in. So, that is one of the things that stood out to me. Oh, here it is. I'll read the quote for verbatim, and I'll get you out of here, Tony. Thomas Bryant after Game 6 of the finals, I think this is a good life lesson. He said, a lot of people, when things go left or when they don't get their way or they don't get the playing time they want, they said they got screwed over. But that's not always true. You still got to stay resilient through it. I hope that people realize that I stayed resilient, and because of that, I was able to contribute and accomplish things that other people never thought I'd be able to do. And that to me, I was like, how can you not root for this guy? How can you not feel that in your soul if you're the underdog, if we're all got struggles we're going through? And so, yeah, I guess that's what I'll leave it on. One last thing, Tony, can you plug your work and where people can find you?
Yes, in Forbes, story with Talon Peter coming up. I talked to his college coach for about 15 minutes on the phone this week. That was very fun, about Myles leaving and all sorts of stuff. Locked on Pacers every single day, but getting hard to talk about free agency when the Pacers have done a bunch of nothing. So we'll figure something out.
Either way, you subscribe to my buddy Tony. You can follow him on Twitter at Tony R East, which I think is, when I think of R, I think of regal. I think of like luxury and things like that. So Tony R.
Royalty.
East, yes, royalty. You can go follow him there. And obviously, for our purposes, you can check out the James Boyd podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Thanks for Tony to come on. And we'll check in with you all very, very soon. And of course, the next edition of this podcast will feature a lot more Colts talk. But for those who are basketball heads like me, we couldn't, exclude what the heck happened with this Pacers season. So until next time, my friends.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. That's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter.com/zip.